So 8, but this time we're having part 1 of 2. And it's all happening because my guest, really good friend of mine, I don't even know where to start. John, thank you for being here, one. And we're going to have 2 stories to tell. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what you wanted. I got plenty.
You got plenty, but we definitely going to have 2.
But thanks for having me. It's great to see you, man. We talk a lot, but I haven't seen you in person in a long time.
It's been a while, and I'm glad we're doing it in this setting because it goes into what this is really all about. You know, I had a vision. I know you and I have worked together in your later tour as a chief of police, and we'll talk about that. But it needed to be done. I really have a passion for all this. I teach this stuff, and so let's get into let's get right into it because. The way I'll always like to start is having these episode questions, okay? So the first question is, look, on a scale of 1 to 10, right, 10 being the highest, please rate the importance of internal affairs in a police department and why.
Police department, internal affairs in the police department on a 1 to 10 is, and this is based on my total career.
Yes.
Beginning to end. It's absolutely a 10. Absolutely, positively a 10. And I say that because it is important that we as a department or any department, we need to be transparent. And no one hates a bad cop worse than a good cop. Yeah. So to keep us in line and to keep us clean, we need to have some sort of entity that's going to remove or take out any of that bad element that makes the rest of us look bad. And when I say us, I mean cops everywhere.
Yeah, true to the point that some people, believe it or not, rate it a little lower. You've never worked internal affairs.
No.
I know that.
No.
I have, and you know, I tend not to sound biased, but even if I didn't work internal affairs, as my career has gone through the years, I really truly believe it's super important because they are the checks and balances and they are the watchers. Like you said.
Who polices the police?
Who polices the police? I did ask one of my guests prior about civilian oversight. What's your thoughts about civilian oversight, if any?
I believe this civilian oversight, it's important, and I truly believe it's important, but I also believe that those civilians need a certain amount of training to understand what the officers are going through and what they face on a daily basis. And I believe they truly need some sort of background on the law and our policies.
Yeah. I mean, independent review is
correct.
Goes a long way.
Absolutely.
Would that be fair to say?
Absolutely.
Because sometimes we take personal.
Of course.
Our levels of review.
Of course.
I'm sure you've been there.
Yeah, I have.
And we'll talk about that. But before that, the second episode question is always, look, what's their job? What's an internal affairs? I know you haven't worked the assignment, but in your opinion, from your lens, in your experience, what do you think their job is? What are their duties and responsibilities? Well, actually, more than just that. What's the purpose? What's the end result?
Well, just what we talked about. I think we have to have an entity that polices the police. So I believe that is their job. When the complaints come in that rise to the level of possible misconduct or criminal activity, someone needs to come in and do those investigations. But at the same time, those investigations also should lead to the truth and either show that the officer did wrong or to protect the officer as well.
And often the question is, do we get to the truth?
Again, that goes on a case-by-case basis. I know there's been a lot of guys who've been through IAs that in the end, when you look at it through my lens or other cops' lenses, it looks like they got a raw deal. And that very well could be. I've heard many horror stories of what's happened and how that's happened and why that's transpired. But again, when it goes back to internal affairs, I believe the internal affairs component, their job is to find the facts. Once the facts have been found to the best of their ability, then it's up to the command staff and higher levels to decide where it goes from there. Right. And a lot of times, that's where I think things get convoluted.
Oof, yes. No stone goes unturned.
Correct. No stone guns unturned.
Unfortunately, some stones are never turned.
That is correct. And there's a lot of times, even though those stones are unturned, then it goes to an opinion of someone from command staff who may have a different outlook or angle on what that's supposed to look like and what should happen to that officer. And a lot of times that's where things get bad.
Yeah. Now the rabbit hole. You go down the rabbit hole.
Go down that rabbit hole.
And next you know, it doesn't even become about the actual process.
No, it becomes about maybe something political, maybe something personal. You know, there's been so many, and over the years I've seen so many that you don't even really know why, but you've got to hope and trust in the system that in the end, if that officer was doing what he was supposed to be doing within the policy, and I still remember this from when I was in the academy with a pure heart and good intentions, it should come out good.
Yeah, you know what? I couldn't agree with you more, and it's a tough assignment.
Absolutely.
Not many people realize it, how much of an impact it has on everything, right? All stakeholders.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and you're going to affect many people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, let's take a trip down memory lane, why don't we? Let's see, LAPD, 28 years?
28 years with LAPD.
Okay, and then Chief of Police?
I was Chief of Police of California City, California for 2.5 years.
Okay, and you were a motor sergeant?
I retired as a motor sergeant.
Okay, you know what? I'm going to stop there for a second. So I got a question about motor. Well, the first question I have about motors, which is like a whole different culture.
Absolutely,
we can
it
kind
is.
of have chuckle and laugh a little bit.
Absolutely,
about
it is.
You know what? Look, I didn't come on the job. I did not come on the job to write tickets or traffic enforcement. It's just something that it just wasn't in me. For some people, it is.
Right.
But yours is a little unique because, correct me if I'm wrong, but were you a motor officer before you became a motor sergeant?
I was. I was.
You were?
I were.
Okay.
During my career, I was extremely blessed, by the way. I got to do a lot of stuff. And when I talk to these young kids who want to come on, I absolutely recommend a big department like ours, LAPD, because there's so many different things you can do.
Right.
And I sell that, man. I'm like, dude, there's like 250 jobs you can do. You can ride a motorcycle, you can ride a bike, you can have a horse, you can scuba dive.
Be a pilot.
You can be a pilot. It just goes on and on and on. And I encourage them, you know, when you get on and once you learn how to work patrol, because everyone does, I mean, there's no way around that, then find out what you're interested in and go after it. Go after it, but don't stay there a long time because there's so many other things you can do.
Yeah.
And because I did that, I mean, you know, obviously I did my patrol time and then I worked crash at the time, gangs, and then I was a training officer and I was up in air support for a hot second, hardest job I've ever had. I don't know how those guys do it.
Oh.
I just don't. Flying across the city at 80 knots and looking for a house this big. Yeah, good luck with that. And again, and I worked motors. I was an academy instructor. I was a senior lead officer. And then I became sergeant.
Wow. And so you became a sergeant, you did your patrol time as a sergeant, and then did someone like hit you up, or did you just say, you know what, I'm going to go back to motors?
Funny you should say that. While I was a boot sergeant in Hollenbeck, somehow I made an impression on somebody there.
Okay.
And the captain came to me and she said, "You were a slow." I said, "Yes, ma'am, I was." And she said, "Are you off probation yet as a sergeant?" And I said, "Well, I think sergeant probation's only 6 months." She said, "Yeah." I said, "Ma'am, I've been here a year." She said, "Well, tell you what, I want you to take over our slow program and our crow program, and you're going to be the guy."
And for the purposes, if I may interject, Crow being the community relations
community
office,
relations and the senior lead officers.
Senior lead officers. This is all community-based type policing.
Correct.
At its finest.
At its finest, and I truly believe in that. I'm totally bought into that program, by the way, and that's another story that I can go on for hours about the community-based thing, but I really learned a lot from that, and I went from being a patrol sergeant and having my patrol den to about 150 people. Because I had the slows and I had the reserves and we had a PAL program and we had my civilian staff, and I just got thrown into the fire. And the sergeant too there, as soon as I got in, he left and went IOD.
Okay.
So it was me.
Okay, so you had a sergeant that was had an injury.
Right.
and took off. He was Sergeant 2B, and he was just above you because you ran. He was the officer in charge.
Correct.
And he took off because of this injury, and here you're it, Johnny.
Basically gave me no background, said, hey, good luck, bye. And I'm like, I got thrown into the pool.
Okay, what was
So
that
then
like?
the captain had to go to the commander and say, hey, we need this guy. We got to keep him off the wheel. Because otherwise I would have had to wheel out, as you know.
Exactly, yes, transfer
So
out.
I got to stay there. But my angst was that the Sergeant 2 spot wasn't available, and it was on a promotional freeze, like we always do.
Yeah.
And my worry was that I would keep the job, and in the end, I would have to interview for my own job, and mine didn't even get it.
Yeah.
So I thought, motor sergeant is a really good job. It's very coveted, and I had already been a motor for 6 years back in the 90s, and I thought, you know what? I can do that. I'm going to make lieutenant's pay. I'm going to get a take-home ride.
That's right.
But bad news is I got to supervise motor cops, which is like trying to keep kittens in a box. It's motor cops are extremely individual
Yeah.
people, and they march to the beat of their own drummer.
That's right.
And they do their job well.
Yes.
Don't get me wrong, they do their job well.
Yes.
But they don't like to be told how to do their job.
Well, I would tend to think that one of those reasons is because when you're doing all these traffic stops, dude, at some point someone's just like going off on you. Because look, here's a saying, right? Look, nobody wants to get a ticket, even us now.
Oh no, I understand.
Someone pulls you over, you're like, really, dude, really? And then some people freak out.
Right.
Some are really arrogant. Some really take it so serious
Yes.
and take it to a level. And the motor officer's like, bro, you went like 65 or 35, and they just each and every day, some for 12 hours, some for 10 hours. So if you want to give them barking orders, or I should
Right.
say marching orders,
Right.
they're
And-
like,
But see, you got to understand about motor cops again. If you argue with a motor cop, it's kind of like wrestling with a pig in mud. Eventually, you realize the pig likes it.
yes.
So, some of my most entertaining stories that I've told my family and all my friends have come from traffic stops. But I would impress on them. I said, listen, here's the deal. We are pulling over a John Q. citizen on his way to work. Immediately, I'm going to make him late. That's going to cost him money. I'm going to write him a ticket. That's going to cost him money. That ticket is going to go on his record, and his insurance is going to go up. That's going to cost him money. Yes. So I had a certain amount of empathy for that.
Absolutely.
And I was willing to take a certain amount of venting, let's say.
Yes.
But my biggest thing was get their information.
Yeah.
And I would tell them that every time. What did I do? Listen, I'm more than happy to discuss that with you. Please, can I have your license, registration, proof of insurance before
Yeah.
we start?
Yeah.
And I'll explain this in depth. Because if you don't do that, I don't know if you remember, because you didn't write a lot of tickets,
Yeah.
you're never going to get that information because they want to plead their case.
Yeah.
And I would school them on how to go to court. I would. I said, listen, I'm human. I could be wrong. Probably not, because I've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
And but if you decide you want to take me to court, please don't go up in front of the judge and say, I didn't do it. He's going to find you guilty. Here's what's going to, I used to walk them through it.
They're like
I used to
sitting there
walk them
going,
through it.
okay.
I said, listen, I'm going to say what I saw. Now it's your turn. Now you get to ask me questions. You get to basically cross-examine me, bring in pictures, draw diagrams, bring in witnesses. Don't just say I didn't do it or my car doesn't go that fast or it wasn't me behind the wheel, because you're going to lose that, man. Honestly. And in the end, 90% of the time they thank me. You know what? Thank you. They thank me for giving them a ticket.
Oh, yeah. No.
Because I was that guy.
Yeah.
I got time, man. Let's discuss it.
Yeah, we got all day to talk about this.
But I got some of my best stories from those people.
And we'll touch on that a little later on, because that is a segue now, because this Internal Affairs podcast show, we're going to talk about, we've had these talks before.
Right.
We're in this episode is, I know there was a 128, there was an Internal Affairs when you were a motor sergeant.
That is true.
And let's get into that. Walk me through it, and then tell me what happened. And more important than anything, just for the people who are watching and listening, is everything about what we're trying to do in this particular podcast is lessons learned. I'm really a big believer in that. I think we can all get some growth, and let's go.
Well, the incident we talked about, again, I had 26 years on the job when this happened.
Wow.
So I had a pretty stellar career. Again, I worked many specialized units. I was really blessed,
You were almost on your way out.
and I was on my way out. I was already on drop.
Okay.
I had just dropped,
Right.
and
That's a retirement program where
Yes.
you get to lock in your pension, but still work for a maximum of 5 years.
5 years at
and at the
100%.
5th year mark, guess what? You got to go.
you got to go unless you bounce.
Unless you bounce, which is a whole different.
Right. So, I'm doing my job. I'm having, believe me, I had a great career. I had a good time. I was that guy. I'm like, I love this job, man.
Yes.
I do. I was kind of the disgruntled guy early on because, and maybe some of your other guests have talked about it, some of the old time coppers had that attitude. Kid, this job, it's terrible. They don't pay us enough, blah, blah, blah. And you can get sucked into that really easy.
Yeah.
Until
influence.
the light went on for me one day, and I'm like, this is a great job. Could we make more money? Sure. But I agreed to do this job for this amount of money, and there's no other job I'd want to do. So I'm going to make the best of it. So I became that guy.
Yeah.
So anyway, to get to the point, so I'm working South Traffic, and I'm on my way to work one day, and to set the story up, I had worked motors in the mid-'90s
Okay.
for 6 years. And
Okay.
we were riding Kawasaki's then, and during that time, they had just introduced shotguns to the motors.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So we had these shotguns on the side of our bikes, and they were in these locked brackets
right.
on the side
You
of our
can
bikes.
mount 'em.
It was a mount. But see, you go like this because that makes sense.
Correct.
They were like this, the
Okay.
long way. So
for the purposes of the show, as you're looking at the camera, they're this way, but not.
correct.
Okay, got it.
However, now they are. And we'll talk about that.
Would that be the Johnny Walker rule?
Well,
You don't wanna take- we don't wanna take
it evolves to that. It evolves to that. So during that time, they were finding a lot of the motors, they were Kawasaki's then, were losing their shotguns on the freeway. And what it came to find out doing the testing on these racks was hard jolts to the rack would pop the rack open. And unbeknownst to you, if you're riding along, 75 miles an hour on your way to work or on your way home, the shotguns would pop out on the freeway.
Really?
Or on the streets.
You wouldn't know.
You wouldn't know. So there was many of these incidents that occurred over the years. Well documented. Well documented.
Well researched.
Yes. However, it's almost comical, but very typical LAPD. Their fix for that was they went to the bicycle guys who rode the bicycles on patrol, and they had this Velcro strap that they used to put around their leg to keep their pants from getting in the sprocket of the bike.
Okay.
They issued us this strap to wrap around the mechanism so it wouldn't pop open.
Okay.
Right. So keeping that in mind, fast forward, it's 11 years later.
Uh-huh.
I now become a motor sergeant. I get issued my Harley Davidson motorcycle
Okay.
with the same rack. However, I'm thinking these must be new racks or they've resolved the issue.
So you knew that there was issues with the manufacturer Kawasaki, but when you got your Harley Davidson,
Well,
is that something that was brought to your attention
no.
when you came back as a motor
No,
sergeant?
because as it turns out, they were aftermarket racks, but they were still using the same racks from the 90s.
Okay.
And this is 2010, 2011.
Okay.
And they give me the bike. So I'm like, we must have new racks now. They didn't give me a strap.
Right.
I don't think,
Did anybody tell you?
no. No.
Was there anyone in the, I don't know, what do they call that?
The motor
uniform committee,
garage?
or the,
No.
What's that uniform committee? Or there's a
No.
committee that talks about equipment.
Right.
Ooh, we
But
should get new equipment.
It would have been probably the motor garage. There should have been something in the policy about it.
Correct.
Something we signed for.
Yes.
That says, hey, man, here's your strap and you got to use this thing.
Got it.
Because we still have the same ridiculous racks we had 11 years ago and they still don't work.
Wow.
So there's the backstory.
Okay.
So I'm riding to work one day, happy as can be. It's a summer day, and I'm riding down Martin Luther King Boulevard.
Okay.
And a car comes up next to me, and someone's really frantic, and I'm thinking tactics right away. What does this person want? And am I in a bad place if something bad goes down here? Mm-hmm. So I pull over and I actually get off my bike, and she says, "Your shotgun popped off of your bike like 3 blocks back," and I went. You can only imagine the horror that went through my mind at that moment. So I get on my bike. I stay off the air. I'm like, don't panic yet. Now remember, the shotguns were on the right side of the bike. I was going westbound, so I'm trying to think logically that the shotgun must have popped out and bounced northbound. So I'm flying down with my lights and siren on down, because to me that's an emergency.
Of course.
Down King Boulevard, and I'm looking at the north curb as I go. I go for about a mile. I got nothing. So now I'm really starting to get that anxiety, like there's a loaded shotgun out there and you need to find it because somebody's going to get hurt. So I immediately got on the air, requested 2 Southwest units to meet me at whatever corner I was at. Uh-huh. They show up. I'm starting to brief them on what happened. And another person comes by and goes, "Hey, are you the cop that lost the shotgun?" Yeah, I am. Well, the guy down there across the street from the Jack in the Box, all those guys that hang out in front of the barbershop, they got it. I'm like, okay. So once again, I still haven't made a major issue out of it yet because I don't want it to be a big deal.
That's right. We're in investigator mode.
So I tell the 2 patrol guys, the 2 patrol units there, I said, listen, let me try first. I'm very community-based now, right?
Yeah.
I know all about it. So I very calmly pull my bike up. I park my bike and I get off and I walk up to the group. I said, "Hey guys, how you doing? Listen, I just lost my shotgun like less than 5 minutes ago right in front of this barbershop. And I know that you guys are always in this neighborhood. You care about the neighborhood. You don't want anybody to get hurt. So I know somebody picked that thing up. You probably have it in the barbershop and you're holding it for safety till I come back. Tell you what, show me where it's at. I'll get it so no one gets hurt. I promise you, whoever saved me is going to get a steak dinner, and I can probably get you some sort of certificate from the city thanking you for your community service." And out of 10 guys, almost in unison, said, "What shotgun?"
Kind of like crickets.
Yeah, but they actually said, "What shotgun?" Like, we didn't see anything. And so I'm like, "Are you sure?" They're like, "No, man, we didn't see a shotgun." I said, "We're going to play it like that. We didn't see a shotgun." Everybody turn around and get up against the wall. And that's when I call in the cavalry. I shut down the barbershop. I have each one of these guys searched. And now it's on, right? And now the cat's out of the bag. I got units rolling.
You set up a perimeter?
I set up a perimeter.
You made notifications?
Made all my notifications. The lieutenant shows up. I mean, it's not my first rodeo, right? I've been through this before, but I've never been the subject, obviously.
Right.
So now I'm trying to do what I think I can do while they're doing their thing, the patrol guys, because I'm not going hands out with these guys, obviously, because that's no longer my job. So I start trying to canvass the area for security cams. And I send a couple other coppers to do the same. I go across the street to the Jack in the Box. Jack in the Box says, we only video the inside of the restaurant. However, the guy says to me, he was the manager, he goes, "I was at the drive-up window," and the guy in the drive-up window says, "Hey, that cop just dropped his shotgun in the middle of the street." So I knew I was on the right track.
Okay.
I knew, okay, but the worst has happened, right?
Right.
I still have that sick to my stomach feeling.
Someone, would it be fair to say that someone out of these 10 knows where that shotgun is?
Oh, there's no doubt in my mind.
Okay, got it. Okay.
If not all of them.
Right.
Because they were all there.
Yes.
So
we're playing games.
Right. So then I get a call on the radio. "Hey, Sarge, we need you to come over to this location. We've got some security footage. We want you to look at it."
Okay.
I'm here to tell you the best security cameras of any merchant up and down MLK are the cannabis vendors.
Yes.
The weed dispensaries have the best. So I'm reviewing the cameras, and sure enough, you see me going down the street. My shotgun pops off the bike. It bounces once northbound, takes another bounce southbound. You can see the crowd of guys. One guy in a blue shirt breaks out of the crowd. The Dodgers should sign him up to play shortstop, because on the third bounce, he caught that sucker in midair. And he ran back to the group. And you see this all on video. They're all standing around watching this, and the next thing you know, you see the guy that had the blue shirt on walking out of the crowd with a buddy of his, and now there's a blue shirt around something that looks like a broomstick, probably a shotgun. So now I call in the gang guys, and they positively ID the guys, and they know where they live. So I'm like, okay, things are looking up, right?
Okay.
So in the meantime,
We're making progress.
We're making progress. So in the meantime, because now we have 2 possible named suspects, ID'd, and we know where they live. So in the meantime, now I got a bigger perimeter set up. I got canines coming in. I get 2 canines show up, and now I got a plethora of resources there. But now I'm kind of like the little kid in the penalty box sitting at the CP. Right? Lieutenant's there, he takes over.
So you're at the command post of this whole incident.
Right. I'm no longer...
You're no longer part of this.
I'm no longer part of this.
You're not in investigative mode anymore.
No.
You're accused.
I am the subject.
You're the subject of an internal affairs
As
complaint.
It turned out to be.
Yeah.
That is
You're
correct.
accused.
Yes. So for the first time in my career, I felt like that big. But it gets worse. So... you got all these guys coming out, and it was holiday time. So at South Traffic, we had a bunch of extra brand new P2s assigned to traffic just to go out and write tickets. That was their job.
Okay.
So now we have all these extra resources. We bring them in, and now, as I'm sure you've been part of it, when the canine does their searches, they need officers to be with them.
Correct.
To either, number one, protect them and their dog, number one, and number two, if in fact they find a suspect, they must take that suspect into custody.
Yeah.
Okay. And it was shared with me later, one of the young cops that they brought in was deathly afraid of dogs.
Okay.
Deathly afraid. So from what I hear, I wasn't there, they started their search, and one of the cops that was deathly afraid of the dogs was assigned to go with the handler. He does. He's standing at the gate of a residence. The dog runs in the driveway, does an immediate about face, comes back out and latches onto this cop's leg. Oh. And just starts tearing him up. They said there was blood flying everywhere. There was meat off his leg flying everywhere. The handlers are going crazy trying to get the dog off. Didn't shoot him. Had a shock collar. We're choking him out. On and on. They finally get the dog off the kid. Okay. They put it over the radio that they had someone was a victim of dog bite and they need an ambulance. They don't say it's a cop.
Correct.
They just say it's a victim.
Okay.
So, we're creatures of habit. If it's not one of us, there's no major sense of urgency, but we make the call and request, right?
Yeah.
However, the fire department is very reluctant because the scene has not been secured, right?
Correct.
Right, there's no code 4. There's still a gun out there.
Yes.
We believe in someone's hands. So the fire department's sitting at the CP. The next thing I know, I see one of the canine handlers run to their rig, grab their medical bag, and run back. As it turns out, she saved the kid's life. Because by the time the RA unit got there, she had already done what she needed to do.
Right.
And of course, they got chewed out for not. Why didn't you say over the air it was a cop? Okay.
If I may interject at this point,
Please.
Having a chance to reflect, as you're telling me this incident right here, right now, I suppose as lessons learned, is there, if the ambulance would have gotten there earlier, you think there would have been a different outcome?
No,
Okay.
because the damage was done to his leg.
Okay.
And just as a side note, I went and saw that kid every day in the hospital.
Right. So you just felt the sense of urgency just wasn't there.
Correct. I just didn't feel it. And, when it was brought up afterwards, even the fire department was like, if you would have let us know it was a cop, we would have not waited for a code 4. We would have busted
Those are lessons learned.
our hiney to get in there and do what we had to do for this
Okay,
kid.
so then what happened after that?
So now the problem is now compounded because now, supposedly, I mean, it's a chain reaction. I get it because of the fact I lost my shotgun. Now we have a perimeter. Now we bring out the dog. Now a kid gets hurt and seriously hurt. Maybe a career-ending injury, maybe.
Right.
I don't know where he is today,
Mm-hmm.
but I did see the injury and it was severe. And again, now I'm feeling some sort of guilt.
Of course.
Even though at the time I was, and now that I've gone over it in my head many, many times, you know, there's nothing I can do to control that.
Right. Any accountability on your part?
And again, because, and it'll come up at the end that it was a true malfunction of my equipment. It was no neglect on my part. But I felt the political pressures of the department. They felt that they had to initiate this complaint.
Okay.
Now, again, in retrospect, I've known that this thing has malfunctioned many, many times over in the
Absolutely.
past.
Absolutely.
And no one has ever been disciplined for it. But now it's an issue. So immediately they're like, well, do you have your strap? I was not issued a strap. Then they go into the policy and they find out there's nothing in the policy that says I have to have the strap or anywhere that I signed for a strap. However, it immediately, the department did a audit of every motor officer in the city to find out if they had their strap. So now it's affectionately known as the Walker strap. So because of that. So I had the captain come and assure me, hey, listen, this is not a big deal. You know, it was a mechanical malfunction. I agree, Captain. I had a commander. 2 nights later, we were at a big event in the city, and he approached me, and he said, hey, I heard what happened, but I had no idea. Of course, he's a commander, but I had someone run the stats for me of how many times this has happened over the years, and we still haven't fixed it. I said, Commander, you're right, and I hope you take that into consideration.
Of course.
Because I'm feeling bad enough because the kid got hurt.
Yes.
And I mean, I had to see his family and his wife, maybe even tongue-in-cheek, said, oh, it's your fault. I had to take that, bro. That hurt.
Yeah.
You know, okay, it's a gun. No one got hurt from the gun, but the kid got hurt. So the ending of the story is, part of the ending is they locate one of the guys and they jam him, and it turns out he's on probation for narcotic sales, happens to have $5,000 in cash in his pocket, which they use for leverage. They said, well, this is asset forfeiture. You're on probation. The likelihood this was acquired during drug dealings is pretty high, so we're going to keep this money. Well, how am I going to get it back? If we find the shotgun, it's quite possible you can get your money back. Within 1 hour, Southwest gets an anonymous tip that my shotgun is in a couch in an alley somewhere off of Van Ness. Shortly after that,
Out of a movie.
yeah, I'm telling you, you can make a movie out of this thing. Guy comes in and says, hey, can I get my money back? Sure, you can. So that's how it was worked. They got my shotgun back, so streets are safe again. He got his money back, so he's a happy guy. No one was charged with a crime. However, a kid got hurt.
Yeah.
A police officer got hurt. So the next thing I know, and we've talked about this too, the 128 is,
Yeah.
they ride it. But when I was a young officer, a brand new probationary officer in Rampart, they used to be 181s.
Correct. That's the LAPD form for initiating a personnel
Correct.
complaint.
And I wanted to work that into the story because that's important. Because when I got to Rampart, that was my locker number. Yeah. And somebody came up to me and I said, they said, oh, you got 181. I go, what does that mean? They go, you'll find out. Stay here long enough, kid.
You'll know, kid.
Oh my God.
You'll know, kid.
Officers, older OGs got the best lines. You'll figure it out, kid. Stay here long enough, you'll figure it out. So they initiate the complaint, and I get a paper reprimand for it a week before I retired. I mean, and it was this thick. And I kept saying, wait a minute, I disagree with this. I said, this is a malfunction. You're charging me with failure to maintain my equipment. You know what I countered with? Isn't that dog the canine handler's equipment?
Yeah.
I didn't bite the officer. The dog bit the officer. And that's at canine handlers. That's his equipment. Was there 128 against him?
Yeah.
You can only imagine what the answer to that was.
Yeah.
No.
Yours.
No.
Yeah.
No. So they made an example of me, in my opinion, because of the injury.
Do you? Let me ask you this: absent the incident with the canine,
Right.
do you still think there would have been a 128 initiated complaint?
I honestly don't.
Really?
Especially if they recovered the shotgun and no one got hurt. I mean, if you want to talk about case law
No, I
or past practice,
absolutely
not.
Yeah, I mean, how can you initiate a personnel complaint against you when somebody in internal affairs is going to be like, well, you know what? It's more like a policy issue. I mean, we don't these straps. There's just nothing in writing. This happens all the time. Why are we going to jam Johnny Walker up for this when in reality we're the ones who should be taking the hit?
The city should have took the hit for inferior equipment.
Yeah.
However, now on the new Beamers,
Okay.
that shotgun sits like this.
Oh,
So
imagine that.
Again, maybe good things did come out of it.
Absolutely, and
Good.
that's what I was going to ask you too. You know,
Absolutely.
what are
There's
the
a
lessons
lot
learned
of
from this?
takeaways from this. Again, and it really, I mean, did it leave a bad taste in my mouth as I walked out the door? Yeah, it did. It really did. I mean, I had a stellar career. I had a lot of great jobs. I've got a lot of commendations. I got medals. I got this. I got that. And then they hit me with that on the way out the door. It was almost like, ow,
Yeah.
bro, come on. But I've learned since then. I'm no longer the guy that says, why did this happen? Why did this happen to me?
Yeah.
No, this happened for me. Because
Yeah.
there's a lesson. There's a lesson. And I learned that lesson. And I didn't know it at the time because I thought my law enforcement career was over. However, once I went on and became a chief, I learned a lot of lessons from that.
Which we'll definitely get to.
And we'll get to.
We'll get to that in part two. I got to tell you, Johnny, it's one of those things where, number one, it sucks being on the way out.
Oh yeah, that was like the worst part. I'm
Right.
like, man,
And-
here's your cake, and you get to sign for your.
Here's your 120 on your way out.
And my box of
Congratulations.
stuff.
Congratulations. Here you go.
You don't get a gold watch. Here's what you get in your box of stuff that you carry out, right? You clean out your locker.
That's right, and here's his personnel
Just put my personnel complaint right there. It was the heaviest thing in the box.
Yes.
So, and it was heavy here.
That's my point. As much as we're laughing about it and having a sense of humor about this particular incident, as it relates to heaviness, I can tell you that, like myself, on my way out, unfortunately, something happened to me as well, and it weighs so heavy on
Right.
you emotionally because you did have this stellar career.
Right.
You loved what you do.
I loved it.
It was a great job. It's changed me. I mean, I tell this to people all the time. Look, this is the type of profession, and this is more on a personal note. Men are selfish in every way you can imagine. And I have an awesome daughter, and it's taught me to be such an unselfish person because the job, the functions of this job has really helped me not be so self-serving.
Because it's bigger than you.
Exactly. And you don't know that
No.
until you actually do
No.
it. And
No.
and I know that hit on the way out, it stings. And you're right. We don't want to victimize ourselves.
No, it's easy though. And
Yes.
I think about that. Let's just say I was in the middle of my career.
Yeah.
Let's just say, that would weigh heavy on me and could make me extremely disgruntled.
Yeah.
And now you have a disgruntled officer, and we're seeing more and more now with officer wellness. That's a problem.
Yes, it is. Yes,
So
it is.
it's all a chain reaction. But did I learn from it, and was I able to carry it into my next career as a chief? I believe so. And not to get into the next segment, but however, I made sure my guys had the best equipment that my city could afford.
Yeah.
because that's one of the things I promised them when I got there. It was a very small city with this very small budget. I couldn't offer them a lot of money. I gave them like the minimum going rate for police officers in Kern County, but I promised them 3 things. I said, I'm going to give you a comfortable place to work. I'm going to do everything I can in the station to make sure the showers work, the toilets don't leak. Our break room was a mess when I got there. Within 3 months, it was brand new. I got people to sponsor us for that. I said, you'll get the best equipment I can possibly get you. And last but not least, I will be fair and consistent.
Yeah.
That if you have nothing else to offer, at least offer them that.
Yeah.
Because that's what got people want.
No, totally. You know what? So important. Spot on. Thank you for sharing that. Let's get into this. Getting close to the end of the segment here. You know, I always ask all my guests best and worst, but actually I'm going to go worst and best. Worst incident or worst thing that you saw on the job that you can share with us real quick. That stands out.
And I tell this to everybody. I work for the best police department in the world, and I got to see things most people never get to see. But I did see things I never want to see again. And the shotgun thing was bad because it hurt me.
Yeah.
And it hurt someone under my span of control, under my command.
Yes.
And that really hurt. But the worst thing I ever saw, again, was working traffic, and I saw a hellacious traffic accident that involved kids that I'll never forget. And I still see those kids' faces.
Yeah, that's tough. Okay, well, what about the best?
The best.
There's got to be a best.
But again, I go back to, God, I just had such a great career, and I had so many highlights, so many great
really
moments.
Makes you just...
But I'm going to brag for a minute, man, because you can relate to this. 18 years on the job, I finally take the sergeant's test because I was that guy that was like, why do we do it this way? Why do we do it this way? And so an old timer, an OG, told me this. He said to me, kid, there's 2 views on this department. There's the worm's eye view and the eagle's eye view, and you're not an eagle. So I was like, get it. So I'm like, I'm tired of complaining. I pulled myself up by my bootstraps. I said, I'm going to take that sergeant's test. And you know how many people show up at Hollywood High or Fairfax High the day of the test? Like 3,000 people.
Yes.
They give 500 interviews.
Yeah.
Who's number 1 on the list?
Wow.
That's my claim to fame, baby.
That's awesome, dude.
Number 1. And we were having a hiring freeze at the time, and you know you're only good on the list for 2 years. I didn't get promoted for a year and a half.
Yeah, that happened to me too.
But the calls were coming.
When did you make sergeant?
2009.
Yeah.
But they would call me.
Oh, so
and they called me number 1. Dude, that felt so good. Hey, number 1, have you moved yet? Not yet, buddy. Because they knew once I started to go, the rest of the list was going to move.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's absolutely probably the biggest bragging point I have.
That's awesome.
But the job was it was amazing, man. What do you always say? I had a front row seat to the greatest show on earth.
That's amen to that, man. Amen to that. Look, Johnny, hey, thanks for sharing all this. We are going to come back and do a part 2.
I'm going to stay.
This story, it's just going to even add on because it's had such an impact. I know when you were a chief. Parting words, anything you can tell a young officer, any advice, young officer, young sergeant? Or?
I got one saying that I stole from the great Lou Holtz, was the head coach at Notre Dame for a long, long time. Always do your best. Always do the right thing. And always show people that you care.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong.
No.
You can't go wrong.
Well, on that note, hey, thank you so much for showing up. Everybody, this is going to be wrapping up the show. Don't forget to subscribe, as always. Push the like button, share, and download it as much as you can. And, of course, on my parting words is please be safe out there.